Stop everything. Don't scroll. Don't blink. Don't even think about leaving right now, because what I'm about to show you isn't just a message, it's a divine event that began 48 hours ago in heaven and is still unfolding at this very moment, and your name is in the middle of it. Archangel Michael isn't whispering anymore. He's running through the heavenly gates, his voice echoing like thunder, shaking the very realms above, calling your name. For the past 48 hours, heaven has been in motion, your name recorded, protected, and tested in ways you cannot even imagine. Doors that seemed permanently closed have been shifting, chains that bound your spirit are breaking, and paths that didn't exist yesterday are appearing right under your feet. You are standing at a spiritual crossroads that has already begun. Every second you hesitate is a second that your breakthrough is waiting for someone else. The choices you make right now will determine whether you step into the life you were born to live or watch it pass by while others claim what heaven has been preparing for you. Here's the truth. This is not a vision from the past, and it's not a promise for the distant future. This is happening right now, and the cosmic shift has already started. You just have to stay present to witness it. The angels are clearing your path, unseen forces are being removed, and a divine light is spinning your name higher and higher in the celestial records. If you leave now, you will miss the turning point that could change everything about your life, and heaven will move on to the next soul who stays. So here's what you must do. Stay with me until the very end, and I mean every second. Like this video, not for the algorithm, but because it signals heaven that you are ready. Share it because someone else's destiny is tied to your action. And type your name or Amen in the comments right now, because failing to do this right now will mean your name could lose the momentum heaven has been giving it for 48 hours straight. The gates are open. The breakthrough is already in motion. Are you going to stay, or are you going to miss this once-in-a-lifetime heavenly event? Red circle. The sound did not arrive gently, and it did not arrive quietly. There was no whisper, no subtle nudge meant only for the most attentive ears. When the silence broke 48 hours ago, it broke with intention. Heaven did not clear its throat or hesitate. It spoke the way authority speaks when time matters. The moment Archangel Michael moved, the stillness that many believed surrounded the divine realm vanished, replaced by motion, resonance, and unmistakable presence. This was not symbolic noise or poetic imagery. It was activation. Heaven shifted from observation to action, and that shift carried weight. When Michael moved, heaven itself became alert. Not chaotic, not fearful, but mobilized in a way that only happens when something real is unfolding. Think of a command center coming alive after a long watch, screens lighting up, signals moving, roles re-engaged. That is the closest human language comes to describing what occurred. This was not a ceremonial announcement repeated through history, recycled for comfort or tradition. This was continuity. Something already in motion crossed a threshold, and the sound marked that crossing. It was not meant to startle, but it was meant to be heard. Names were not handled as a group. They were not swept together in a general call. They were spoken individually, deliberately, as if each carried its own frequency. One name followed another, not randomly, but in a sequence that reflected timing rather than worth. And within that sequence, your name was not missing. It did not need to be shouted because it was already recognized. The placement of your name was not accidental or symbolic. It reflected alignment with something already unfolding. That is why this moment feels different from other messages you may have encountered. This is not a warning that resets itself every time it is ignored. This is a live continuation of a process already underway. Heaven does not mobilize like this without urgency. It does not activate layers, call names, and shift attention unless something requires response in the present, not the distant future. That urgency is not rooted in fear, but in opportunity. There are moments when the window opens quietly and closes without drama, and there are moments when heaven signals clearly because remaining unaware would mean missing what has already begun. This was one of those moments. As the sound continued to reverberate, another movement followed almost immediately. The celestial record, something rarely discussed because it is often misunderstood, entered a phase of review. This is not a courtroom scene and not a tally of mistakes. It is closer to a living record of alignment, intention, and direction. 48 hours ago, shifts occurred within those records, subtle but measurable. Some names dimmed, some names disappeared. And some names, including yours, remained present, though not unchanged. Your name did not vanish, but the light associated with it fluctuated. That fluctuation is not a punishment, it is a signal. Heaven always sends signals before removal, before reassignment, before closure. Silence comes after decisions, not before them. This message itself exists because the record is still open. If the process were complete, there would be no need for communication. The fact that awareness is being stirred now is evidence that stabilization is still possible and already in motion. Remaining present matters more than most people realize. Presence is not passive observation. It is alignment through attention, choice, and willingness to stay engaged even when the outcome is not fully visible. When someone disengages during a phase like this, the record does not punish them, but it pauses. Momentum does not disappear, but it waits. On the other hand, staying present stabilizes what has already begun. It allows the light to return to consistency instead of flickering. That consistency is what confirms continuation. There is a mystery here that many feel but cannot yet explain. Why are some names being stabilized right now, while others fade quietly out of sequence? The answer is not moral superiority or spiritual rank. It has more to do with timing and responsiveness. Some people are aligned not because they are perfect, but because they are still listening. They are still willing to remain inside the unfolding moment rather than stepping away because it feels uncomfortable or uncertain. Heaven responds to that willingness more than to polished belief. This unfolding does not operate on human clocks. It does not move in hours or days the way schedules do. It moves in moments. A single decision made within one of these moments can redirect an entire trajectory. That is why this phase feels compressed, intense, and strangely personal. You are not being asked to prepare for something someday. You are already inside it. This is not a future crossroads placed on a calendar. It is an active intersection you are standing in right now. Within this unfolding, there are narrow windows where direction solidifies. They are brief, not because heaven is impatient, but because momentum is already moving. When you choose alignment during these moments, things accelerate naturally. There is less resistance, less need for forcing outcomes, less exhaustion from pushing doors that were never meant to open. When you step away, even temporarily, alignment does not break, but it slows. And slowing during an active phase can feel like confusion, doubt, or loss of clarity. This is why leaving feels heavier than staying, even when staying requires patience. Staying does not mean having all the answers. It means allowing the process to continue without withdrawing your attention. It means recognizing that something began without your permission, but its continuation involves your participation. Heaven does not override free will. It invites it into motion. What makes this moment unusual is that you are not observing it from a distance. You are not watching someone else's story unfold. The language feels personal because it is. The tension you sense is not external drama. It is internal alignment catching up with divine timing. That tension is not meant to scare you. It is meant to wake you up to the fact that you are already involved. The sound from heaven was not an interruption of your life. It was a confirmation that your life is already part of something larger that is actively moving. The record is not waiting to judge you. It is waiting to see whether the light stabilizes or continues to flicker. The moments unfolding now are not demanding perfection. They are asking for presence. High voltage. The moment the event initiated, something else moved at the same time, something most people never see directly. When Michael raised his sword, it was not a gesture meant for symbolism or ceremony. It was an action. That movement signaled the beginning of containment, protection, and confrontation all at once. Unseen battles do not look like chaos from the outside. They look like pressure, resistance, and sudden shifts that cannot be logically explained. Since that first movement 48 hours ago, protection has not relaxed for a single moment. In fact, it intensified. Layers that rarely need reinforcement were reinforced, not because something failed, but because something valuable was being guarded. Resistance did not announce itself. It never does. It escalated quietly, slipping into moments of distraction, heaviness, and unexplained fatigue. That resistance did not come to destroy, but to delay, to blur focus, to make staying present feel heavier than walking away. This is why some doors closed suddenly during this phase. Those closures were not rejection. They were containment. Certain paths had to be sealed temporarily so interference could not reach what was still forming. From a human perspective, A closed door often feels like denial, but from heaven's perspective, it is sometimes the only way to protect what is mid-formation. Heaven is still holding the shield. That has not changed. What has changed is the level of attention required on your side. Protection is strongest when awareness is steady. When focus drifts, resistance finds space to press. This is why the last couple of days may have felt heavier than usual, even if nothing dramatic happened on the surface. That heaviness was not random. It was the sensation of pressure meeting protection, of movement encountering opposition while still being held in place. Nothing slipped through, but you felt the impact. As the unseen conflict continues, clarity begins to sharpen. Two paths have become visible, not in a dramatic vision, but in how each option feels. One path disengages quietly. It does not look like rebellion or refusal. It looks like distraction, postponement, telling yourself you will come back to this later. That path feels lighter at first because it releases tension, but the relief is temporary. Doubt lingers there. Questions multiply. Momentum fades. The other path does not remove pressure immediately, but it brings relief in a deeper way. Remaining present does something subtle but powerful. Doubt begins to dissolve, not because answers suddenly appear, but because alignment restores internal coherence. Things start to make sense emotionally before they make sense logically. On this path, a divine opening emerges while the event is still unfolding, not after it ends. That opening does not require perfection or certainty. It requires participation. This choice is not symbolic or future-oriented. It is active right now. Every moment of attention either feeds continuation or feeds pause. Heaven does not force one path over the other. It reveals them and waits. The reason this choice feels urgent is because the event is live. Choosing presence while momentum is already moving produces a different outcome than choosing it later, after the movement has slowed. As this choice presented itself, something else happened that many people struggle to interpret correctly. The body responded. Pressure in the chest, heaviness in the head, restlessness, sudden fatigue, or even bursts of emotion appeared without clear cause. These sensations were not anxiety created by imagination. They were alignment catching up. Your spirit recognized the shift before your mind could frame it. The pull began the moment heaven shifted, not when you consciously noticed it. The body often becomes the first translator of spiritual movement. Sensation is how alignment confirms itself before language arrives. When something real shifts, the nervous system reacts, trying to recalibrate to a new frequency of awareness. That recalibration can feel uncomfortable, but it is not harm. It is adjustment. Your body noticed before you did, and it responded honestly. This is why trying to think your way out of these sensations rarely works. They are not thoughts to be argued with. They are signals to be acknowledged. When awareness catches up to what the body already sensed, the pressure eases. Not because the event ends, but because alignment stabilizes. During live interventions like this, heaven tracks response, not as surveillance, but as resonance. Responsiveness reveals readiness. Engagement is not demanded, but it is noticed. When awareness spreads, the active covering spreads with it. When someone signals recognition, alignment strengthens. This is why response matters during moments like these more than at any other time. Participation takes simple forms, but their meaning is deeper than they appear. Sharing is not about reach alone. It extends the covering over others who are already sensing something but have not yet named it. Commenting is not noise. It is acknowledgement. A signal that awareness has locked in. Subscribing is not routine. It is alignment with continuity, choosing to remain connected as the unfolding continues. These actions are not obligations. They are indicators of presence. Heaven records responsiveness during live moments because responsiveness stabilizes momentum. It confirms that awareness is active, not passive. In moments like this, even small acts of engagement carry weight because they reflect choice within an unfolding event. Nothing here is accidental. The unseen war, the pressure, the choice, the bodily response, and the invitation to engage are all threads of the same movement. The shield is still raised. The sword is still held. The event is still active. What happens next depends not on fear or force, but on where attention settles as the moments continue to unfold. Red circle. As the event continued to unfold, something quietly but unmistakably changed. The light associated with your name, the same light that had flickered earlier, began to strengthen again. Not suddenly, not dramatically, but steadily, like a signal locking into clarity after interference clears. The celestial record did not remain unstable. It responded. Stabilization has already begun, and that alone carries meaning. It means the process is working. It means presence mattered. It means the alignment you held through pressure was not missed. Michael has not declared completion, and that distinction is important. This is not an ending. It is a strengthening phase. Something larger is still scheduled, something that requires preparation rather than immediate arrival. This current phase exists to ready what is coming, to build capacity, awareness, and steadiness so that the next movement does not overwhelm what it intends to elevate. The relief you may feel now is real, but it is not permission to disengage. It is reassurance that staying present is producing results. As the light stabilized, another symbol began to respond. A door, long associated with resistance and delay, did not suddenly open, but it loosened. That loosening did not come from force. Force was never effective here. Pressure, effort, and overthinking only reinforced its resistance. What shifted it was awareness. Presence during the event changed the interaction entirely. Each moment of engagement reduced the weight holding it shut. The door is responding because the alignment around it has changed. Remaining engaged is not about pushing it open. It is about allowing the opening to complete naturally. The door recognizes readiness, not insistence. As it continues to loosen, something waits on the other side, not as a surprise, but as a response to sustained alignment. What emerges when it opens fully is still forming, shaped by the attention and steadiness you maintain now. This is where promise and warning exist together. Breakthrough moments carry vulnerability. When pressure eases and relief arrives, withdrawal becomes tempting. Many people disengage right when movement accelerates, mistaking relief for completion. Stepping back during a mid-event phase does not cancel progress, but it delays it. Preparation is happening now, not later. Focus is what protects what has already been unlocked. The reason this phase matters so much is because momentum is fragile while it is still forming. Once acceleration stabilizes, it carries itself. Until then, attention acts as reinforcement. Losing focus here does not mean starting over, but it does mean waiting longer for what is already moving toward you. As alignment strengthened, something else activated. Elevation entered what can only be described as a golden spin. Not a chaotic rise, but a smooth acceleration upward, guided rather than forced. Your name moved into active elevation, no longer waiting for permission. The increase in speed is not random. It reflects agreement with the process. When alignment and willingness meet, stagnation loses authority. What once felt stuck no longer has the power to hold you in place. Momentum is not coming. It is already increasing. Small shifts now produce larger effects because resistance has weakened. This is why things may begin to move quickly in subtle ways. Internal clarity, emotional release, unexpected opportunities forming quietly in the background. The spin has begun, and it carries intention. With this acceleration, a season shift becomes visible. Old control patterns, especially those rooted in fear and doubt, are losing power. They do not disappear instantly, but they no longer dominate direction. Delayed blessings that stalled under previous conditions are moving again, not always in their original form, but reshaped with greater alignment. What was lost is not being returned as it was. It is being reformed differently, stronger, clearer, and more sustainable. This is the activation of a new timeline, not one created by wishful thinking, but one unlocked through sustained presence during a live event. Resolution is beginning to emerge, not as a conclusion, but as a transition into movement that finally feels cooperative rather than resisted. The shift is underway, and what comes next builds directly on how this phase is held. What followed next removed the last traces of uncertainty. The scroll was not unrolled to invent something new, but to reveal what had always existed. Michael did not write your blessing in this moment. He held what was already written. Your name was never missing from it. It was never added late, never penciled in as an afterthought. The alignment that occurred 48 hours ago did not change destiny, it synchronized timing. That distinction matters. Nothing was wasted in the delay you endured. The pauses, the detours, the waiting that once felt unnecessary were not erasures. They were safeguards, ensuring that when activation came, it came with stability instead of collapse. This realization replaces confusion with certainty. The questions that once circled your mind begin to lose their urgency, not because answers are shouted, but because knowing settles in quietly. What is meant for you does not need to be chased. It only needed the moment when readiness and timing finally met. That meeting has already occurred. As certainty took root, another restoration began, one that reaches deeper than circumstances. The crown, symbolic of identity rather than status, started returning to its rightful place. Confidence did not rush back all at once, but it stirred. The part of you that once trusted your own direction began to reawaken. Life may have dimmed that sense of self through disappointment, fatigue, or prolonged waiting, but it never destroyed it. What was dimmed is reigniting. Identity healing is not dramatic. It unfolds in subtle ways, in the way you speak to yourself, in the way decisions feel less heavy, in the way hesitation no longer dominates every choice. Authority is being restored gradually, not as control over others, but as clarity within yourself. You begin to remember who you were before pressure convinced you to shrink. With that restoration, release follows. Chains do not break all at once, they break in sequence. Each one represents an old weight, a belief, a fear, a responsibility that was never meant to be carried indefinitely. As each chain loosens, the load becomes lighter. This freedom is not imagined. It is measurable in how your breath deepens, how your thoughts slow, how space opens where tension once lived. Liberation is in motion now. You are not standing at the edge of it, hoping it will arrive. You are inside it as it unfolds. The lifting of the load is happening actively, not as a promise, but as a process already underway. During this release, a structure formed that will support what comes next. A bridge was constructed during the event itself. It did not appear after everything settled. It was built while movement was still happening. This matters because it changes the way assistance arrives. Divine support is no longer late, arriving after exhaustion sets in. It is early, meeting you before obstacles fully form. Resistance continues to decrease, not because challenges vanish, but because momentum has stabilized. What once required effort now responds more naturally. Forward motion no longer feels like swimming against a current. The bridge stands ready, connecting where you were to where you are going without forcing a leap you are not prepared to take. And yet even here, a final tension remains. This phase is fragile not because it is weak, but because it is near completion. Distraction peaks when alignment is almost sealed. The urge to disengage, to relax focus too early often surfaces now. Heaven is observing responsiveness, not to judge, but to confirm continuity. One more moment of presence, one more conscious agreement, seals what has been forming. Leaving at this stage does not destroy progress, but it interrupts flow. Staying does not require strain, it requires awareness. Urgency here is not rooted in fear, it is rooted in opportunity. This is where agreement matters. A seal forms through consent. Simple words carry weight because they clarify positioning. Saying Amen is not ritual, it is alignment. Saying I am ready to receive is not wishful thinking, it is confirmation. Words spoken with awareness finalize what intention alone has been preparing. Heaven responds to active agreement because agreement stabilizes movement. Participation here is not about effort, it is about acknowledgement. When alignment is named, it locks in. With that, the shift settles. The sword lowers not because vigilance ends, but because the conflict that required it has resolved. Protection remains active, steady, and unobtrusive. Doors respond naturally now, without resistance. Delay has ended not as an announcement, but as a reality you begin to feel. Peace replaces tension, not the absence of movement, but the presence of authority. Things move because they are meant to, not because they are forced. Even after this phase, connection matters. Not everyone is reached at the same moment. Awareness spreads in waves and guidance continues to follow alignment. Staying connected sustains progress, not through dependence but through shared momentum. The event does not end abruptly. It continues through awareness, through recognition, through presence carried forward. And as everything settles into its new rhythm, one final confirmation remains, quiet but unshakable. Your breakthrough began before you heard any of this. This moment does not start it, it completes your entry into it. You did not miss it. You were not late. Heaven timed it perfectly. What's unsettling is this. The heaven event that began 48 hours ago hasn't closed yet. Archangel Michael is still standing in position, still watching who stays aware and who drifts away. The shift is real, the window is narrow, and your response matters more than you think. If you leave without acting, alignment weakens. Like this video, share it now, and type Amen in the comments, or risk stepping out of a moment heaven specifically timed for you.